Hello, welcome to All Peace for Ukraine. We are here today to talk about some geography around Ukraine and in Ukraine. If you are a baby boomer or Generation X and the geography of Ukraine and Europe and everything has just changed and you've not kept up with it, this video is for you. If you are a millennial or a Gen Zer and you're just trying to figure out, well, what's going on in Ukraine and why should I care, this is going to be step one for you, and it's probably going to be step one for a lot of us. But we're going to dive in right now to some Ukraine geography and the countries around Ukraine so that you can figure out what's going on. We're going to do more videos in the future if this is of interest to people. Let's dive in. So Ukraine is right here. This is Europe. This is Russia, this great big largest country in the world, Russia. Ukraine right here. We have the capital of Kyiv. Kyiv, the spelling is important. K-Y-I-V, I believe, is the Ukrainian spelling of Kyiv. K-E-I-V is the Russian spelling of Kyiv. So I like the K-Y-I-V myself. Ukraine has a population of about 44 million people compared to Russia, which has 144 million. Brief history, Ukraine has kind of had a long history of being a contested area with various influences from Slavic, Baltic, Polish, Lithuanian, and Finnish areas. It became a part of the USSR as a Union Republic when it was formed in 1922. The USSR formed in 1922, and Ukraine was a part of that. It became independent in 1991 when the USSR began to fall apart. Let's see, we're going to go over here to Kharkiv. So we have Kyiv right up here near the border with Belarus. We have Kharkiv over here. It is the second largest city. Mariupol is down here. This is the city that is just getting absolutely devastated. They have been bombed. I think like 90% of the city is destroyed. There have been tons of deaths. They can't even get the numbers. There are people trying to get out. They can't get out. They can't get food or water in because the Russians keep blocking it. It is just absolutely crazy right now. It is a port city. It is very close to the Russian border, so that is something to know and understand. Odessa is another port city. All of these are on the Black Sea. Odessa is still standing as of today, April 1st, 2022. It's another port city still under Ukrainian control. Russia would love to get their hands on it. Right here is Crimea. Crimea has been under Russian control since 2014, although it is a part of Ukraine and still considered a part of Ukraine. Russia has been occupying it. Ukraine in 2014 kind of had a revolution where their president, who had kind of promised to help get into the EU, kind of reneged on his promise. Stood in the way of getting into the EU. The citizens got upset. They protested. Their president came in with military, and there was open fire killing of protesters. They continued to protest anyway and did not bring weapons, although at the point they threatened to start bringing weapons, the president took off. He went to Russia to see his buddy Putin, and they had new free open elections and elected a new president that would help them meet the needs of what the country wanted. So, but maybe a week or two, it was very shortly after that kind of revolution, is when Russia came in and took Crimea. And they have a lot of military stuff going on in Crimea right now, and a lot of missiles and stuff that can reach into Europe. So it's very concerning to a lot of Europeans. Donbass is an area on the east side of Ukraine, and it's named after a coal mine. And after the protests in 2014 that led to the pro-Russian Ukrainian president flying out of the country and resigning, Donbass was gripped by pro-Russian groups. And it's hard to understand the exact details of it. I'll put some links in the description. There's some great Vice videos on it. But it's hard to understand all the back and forth. But it seems like there's a bunch of different factions, mostly pro-Russian factions in that area. They are weaponized. They have been having active fighting fighting since 2014 back and forth over this area, but there's no clear, it's not like this one group against Ukraine or this one group against Russia. It is a bunch of different groups just kind of causing chaos without any clear definition of what they want or how to solve these armed conflicts. All right, we're going to jump real quick to a brief piece about the European Union. So the European Union is about 27 countries that share sovereignty in some fashion or another. Some share a currency, the euro, so that you can take your euros and go spend them in one country and go spend them in another without having to change your currency to a different type. You can, I believe, cross all the European Union countries without a passport, and I believe you can live in another country within the European Union, and that those countries share that sovereignty with each other. Another thing to understand is NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was formed in 1949 after World War II, and of importance is Article 5. Article 5 says if one member country of NATO is the victim of armed attack, then it is like all NATO countries are being attacked, and all will defend the attacked country. It is important to know that Ukraine has wanted to become a part of NATO and a part of the EU, as some other countries have. We're going to get into that. All right, so we're jumping up to Finland up here. Finland shares a very large border with Russia. It is not a NATO country, but did join the EU in 1995 and uses the euro. Since Russia has invaded Ukraine, Finland has been talking about joining NATO. So if Russia's goal is to not have more NATO countries, that is kind of backfiring in that area. I'm going to kind of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, but for the sake of time, lopping you guys all together. They've had various independences around 1918, and then in 1940 Russia attacked them, and then Russia attacked them and took them over. 1941 German Nazis came in and took them over. And then Russia came back in 1944 and kind of took them over again, and they've been a part of the USSR, each as a union republic of the USSR since 1944. They each gained independence around 1991, and they have all joined the EU and NATO around 2004. Of importance to note is that Estonia and Latvia both have 25% of their populations are Russian, whereas Lithuania only has about 5% of their population is currently Russian. And they were the longest holdout. They continued to fight Russia off until 1950 before they fell under Russian control. All right. So then we have this little blip of land right here, which is Kaliningrad, and it's a part of Russia that became isolated from the rest of the country, like the continental Russia, when the USSR broke apart in 1991. It is important to note right now that the coordinator for the Baltic Republican Party has recently stated he would support a movement to break away from Russia should they not de-escalate in Ukraine. He ripped up a copy of the Russian Constitution at the Russian embassy in Warsaw, Poland, and was like, hey, let's just think about becoming our own peeps here. Let's see. We got Poland right here. Poland is a country which had independence until World War II when German Nazis took it over, and then the Russian military came in and took it over from the Germans and kept it and many other countries under Russian control as a counterbalance to NATO under the Warsaw 1955, the Warsaw Pact. In 1989, Poland had their elections and broke ties with Russia, which led to other Warsaw Pact countries, quote unquote, behind the Iron Curtain doing the same thing. Poland became part of NATO in 1999. They joined the EU in 2004, although they are not using the euro. They're currently receiving the majority of the refugees fleeing Ukraine. They share a rather large border with Ukraine. So it is important to know that after World War II, Russia kind of attacked Germany from the east side whereas the allies came from the west side. Things got kind of cut in half, including Germany. There was East and West Germany when I was growing up, and East Germany was controlled by Russia. So that has fallen since 1991, and it's important to know that. Slovakia is a country right here. When I was a kid, we called that Czechoslovakia, and it incorporated roughly this area here. Slovakia fell under Russian control in 1948 under communist rule. It became independent from Russia in 1989 after getting rid of communism, and it separated from the Czech Republic in 1993. They joined NATO and the EU in 2004. They used the euro, and they are receiving refugees from Ukraine. Hungary, which is right here and also shares a small border with Ukraine. Hungary has a lengthy history as part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Following World War II, they were a satellite state to the USSR. Hundreds of thousands of their government officials and intellectuals of the day and liberal thinkers were taken off to Russian work camps and were killed. In 1989, they peacefully threw off Russian occupation and transitioned to a democracy. They became a member of NATO in 1999. Hungary has, in the recent past, been unfriendly to those seeking asylum. They have been taking in Ukrainian refugees, but they've also been accused of inflating the numbers of people they're taking in to receive more funds from the European Union, which they've been a member of since 2004, although they do not use the euro. All right, just getting back to our baseline here. We got Romania with also sharing a border with Ukraine. Romania gained independence in 1877 from the Ottoman Empire. Their country was carved up in 1939 when the USSR and Nazi Germany agreed to divide it, giving some land to the USSR and some to Hungary. Romania initially entered World War II on the side of Germany, Italy, and Japan, fighting against the USSR. Towards the end of the war, they changed sides and fought with the Allies. After World War II, Romania fell behind the Iron Curtain and became a communist state under occupation by the USSR. Since 1989, they have been working towards a democracy with a current government of unitary semi-presidential republic. They appear to have both a president and prime minister. They became NATO members in 2004, EU members in 2007, and are currently taking in Ukrainian refugees. They do not use the euro. Now we've got Moldova right here. And you would think, boy, Moldova would be in a great situation to take in a lot of Ukrainian refugees, but Moldova's got quite a history here. Moldova is an independent territory. It was ceded by the Ottoman Empire to the Russian Empire in 1877. Sorry, it was an independent territory back in 1877. It was part of the Russian Empire and Romania at different points in time, taking on different names. During the Russian Revolution in 1917, which saw the Russian Empire execute their Tsar, Moldova declared itself independent and they joined Romania. The USSR in 1924 contested this and said, no way, we want Moldova back. In 1940, Romania was forced to give Moldova to the USSR, at which point it became the Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic. So they became a state of the USSR. In 1991, they declared independence when the USSR fell apart, and they made their name Moldova. It is a parliamentary republic with both a president and prime minister. They are not a member of NATO or the EU. Now, what is important to understand about Moldova is it is not, well, no, let's look here. Do they have a line? No, I don't. Well, maybe. This might be it here, this line here. There is a thin strip of land here that is called Transnistria. And it is a breakaway region on the east side of Moldova. It is not an officially recognized state. It is officially part of Moldova, but is considered under Russian military occupation, which began in 1924 when Moldova declared independence and then joined Romania. Although not internationally recognized, Transnistria has created their own government, their own currency, and their own military. On the surface, they are saying they are neutral in this conflict with Ukraine and Russia. However, they have about 2,000 Russian military there. They claim to have taken in 6,000 refugees as of mid-March. Moldova, it should be noted, is the second poorest country in Europe, and there's concerns that Putin will attack there next. There's been a leaked document from the president of Belarus that had some strategic military spots of attack or whatever planned by Russia on it, and Moldova was on that map. So that is a definite concern for them and something we should keep in mind, especially since they are not a NATO state. They don't have that protection that if they are attacked, everybody will support them. So next we have Bulgaria. Bulgaria entered World War II on the side of Germany, Italy, and Japan, and after World War II, they adopted a single-party republic similar to Russia's. In 1990, with the falling of the USSR, they had their first free elections, and now they have a unitary parliamentary republic with a president, vice president, and prime minister. They joined NATO in 2004 and the EU in 2007. They do not use the euro for currency. They are reported to have taken in 20,000 Ukrainian refugees, with more anticipated if Odessa falls into Russian control. So if you remember, Odessa is right up here on the Black Sea in Ukraine, and if that starts to fall to Russian hands, I imagine people might make their way down the coast to Bulgaria. Turkey is rather large here. I want to get them all in here. Okay, their border is kind of here. So Turkey became a unitary presidential constitutional republic around 1923, following the end of the Ottoman Empire. They have been a member of NATO since 1952, but not a member of the EU. They are in a unique position to help the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They have not sanctioned Russia as other countries have, yet they are providing weapons to Ukraine. They have taken around 60,000 Ukrainian refugees, and Turkey also controls Russian access to the Black Sea from the south, although Russia also borders the Black Sea from the northeast. So it's important to notice that Japan had noticed that there were some Russian ships coming around this way. I'm not exactly sure where. If they were going to come up into the Black Sea, they would have to pass through here. Now, Turkey has gone back and forth whether they have the authority to stop them from doing that, and I'm not exactly sure what has happened. But it's also important to note that Russia, they have significant real estate on the Black Sea already, but that just might not be where they're building their ships, right? Let's see. Georgia. Let's talk about Georgia. Georgia and, Armenia and Azerbaijan, they have their own issues too, but let's talk about Georgia because they've got real estate on the Black Sea near Ukraine. Georgia is very complicated. Without going too far back, it declared independence in 1918, but was annexed by the Soviet Union as a Union Republic in 1922. Joseph Stalin, the leader of the USSR, was born in Georgia, and was in power from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953. Georgia again declared independence in 1991 after the collapse of the USSR. Georgia has remained in a state of war with Russia since 2008 after Russia invaded and performed what many considered an ethnic cleansing, displacing 192,000 Georgians and destroying their settlements. Russia currently occupies about 25% of Georgia, including a section of an oil pipeline. They do not appear to have taken many, if any, refugees, and I'm sure that is because they are also in an active conflict with Russia. Now, of course, then we have Russia right here, but right now we're going to jump up to Belarus. Belarus is on the northern border of Ukraine. And Belarus was controlled by various entities such as Poland, Lithuania, and after the 1917 Russian Revolution, the USSR. Belarus was devastated during World War II. It lost about 25% of its people and a huge amount of its resources. Belarus declared independence in 1991. Hey, just like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, all these countries declared independence. They did as well. After the fall of the USSR in 1991, But Belarus has held one free election, and that was in 1994 when Alexander Lukashenko was elected. He remains the president today, having implemented many old authoritarian or communist-type systems, such as the government owning and profiteering from businesses. Belarus has an agreement with Russia, and that's been in place since the year 2000, for shared or integrated economic and defense issues. Although Lukashenko was supposed to be limited to 2 terms as president, he has made changes so that those terms are 7 years instead of 5, and now he's changed it so there's no term limits at all. Belarus is considered an autocracy, meaning virtually all power is concentrated in one person with no checks or balances. Now let's talk about Russia. So Russia is enormous, you guys. It's huge. Okay. Russia has a population of about 144 million people, and it's the largest country in the world. It has the largest population in Europe, and Moscow has the second largest population of any city in Europe, Moscow being the capital of Russia. The USSR, and it should be noted that not all of Russia is in Europe. Part of it is in Asia. So the USSR formed in 1922 following centuries of Tsar rulers. The Tsar was overthrown in 1917, and the country made an attempt to create a utopia by getting rid of classes, no upper, middle, and lower classes. They were creating a classless society where the government and the people controlled production of everything. In this system, for example, farmers did not own the food that they grew. They could get in trouble for keeping the food that they grew. It went into a collective, and it was redistributed. Governments set the priorities and where money should be spent. In the long run, this made inefficient priorities as the government would spend more money to get something accomplished rather than use innovation. So there's no competition. All were working towards the same goal. The country fell into the same Tsar-like history that it had previously, where the leader controlled everything, favors could be bought, people were put into forced labor camps, etc., etc. The USSR had policies of travel restrictions, banned books and movies, secret police, large-scale governmental secrets such as the Chernobyl disaster. Chernobyl is a nuclear power plant in Ukraine, and it blew up. It went kaboom, I believe, in 1986. And the Russian government tried to cover it up, but other countries were detecting radiation and had to send it in. It is still a very active radioactive site, and when Russia came into Ukraine, they got a hold of it, and they seem to have made some matters worse there. I think there's going to be some more information coming out of there because Russian soldiers are going back to Belarus very, very sick. Let's see. They were not allowed to, in the USSR, people were not allowed to criticize the government, and there was no free press. Large amounts of resources were spent on an arms race against the United States after World War II. Wealth, however, continued to be concentrated in those in favor with the president. So there really was still a class, right? In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became the president of the USSR. And when other countries under Soviet control, such as the ones we were just talking about, began to have revolutions, Gorbachev did not react. He kind of let them do their thing and let them regain their independence, really. So that's important to know that, when these countries started to revolt, it was not stopped. And that included Ukraine. So I think the takeaway from this is there's lots of Russian-controlled countries over the last 100 years, and most chose or have been trying to choose a more democratic form of government. That includes Ukraine, and some countries have successfully done this. And Ukraine appears to be somewhere between, the Estonias, Latvias, Lithuanias, and the Belaruses, right? Belarus is still under a very authoritarian control because, they got a president. Their very first president sucked. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania have made it work. Ukraine wants to make it work, and that is what their people are fighting for, and we have to keep all of that in mind. So with that, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to put some links in the descriptions about some of the resources I used to make this video, and if you're interested, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I will make some more. Thank you.